to all the people that made that happen. So Jennifer gave me a few things to maybe talk to you for a few minutes about this morning. One is the importance of professional development. And it's like preaching to the choir. You're here, so you know that. But just a great opportunity to talk about why. Why do we do professional development? First and foremost, it's our mission. It's in the mission of our university to promote learning. And we have great, noble jobs in higher education. And our purpose in higher education is to prepare the next generations. How can we prepare the next generation or the current generation if we're living in the last generation? And so not only do we have to stay current with where we are, but we have to be imaginative about where things are going. We have to create where things are going. And we can't do that without professional development. And professional development certainly is taking advantage of formal opportunities, new opportunities. One of the things we've been trying to do better as a university is talk about ways in which we're first, best, and only. And you're amongst the first, because you're the first people at the first Scholars at Work conference. And so you're role modeling that by the way you are. So it is a part of our mission to promote learning, and that includes within ourselves. So what are we going to get professional development about? Certainly what comes first and foremost to our mind as academics, as faculty, as scholars, is our discipline. How are we staying ahead of the cutting edge things in our discipline? And even as administrator, I have a discipline. Believe it or not, I came up through, just like we as parents, we tell our kids, I was 14 once too. But I still go to the Centers for Disease Control webpage and World Health Organization and look at those things. But that's where we think first and foremost, because we, as teachers, scholars, we want to make sure we're giving the students the most current content in our fields. But professional development goes beyond that. Certainly a part of professional development is keeping pace with learners today. And who they are and where they were born and what they're doing and what their life experiences are. Because they're the students arriving in our classes. We're now facing the generation that have had the iPhone since they were born. They're the I generation. Most of them don't know what a phone is that attaches to the kitchen wall with a curly cord coming out from it. And you think about our life as younger people, whether that was us and there was one phone in the kitchen and many of my friends are getting phones in their bedrooms, and I tried to make that plea, and my mom used to say, young lady, if you can't say it in the kitchen in front of everyone, you shouldn't be saying it on the phone. When I look at what my 16-year-old daughter is dealing with social media and cyberbullying, we're in different planets, and to be aware of that. And so knowing about the learners today, my daughter was talking a lot about friends vaping and stuff about vaping on social media. And I didn't want to admit to her, what is vaping? So I did some digging into finding out what vaping is. It was on NBC National News the other night. So we have to, that's one area of professional development, is learning about our learners today and who they are. Another area for professional development is the national landscape. What's going on in higher education today? Because our students today have many, many choices. And so we have to know what our competitors are doing, what those at the forefront leading the way are doing, what those trailing behind us are doing. So we continually need to stay abreast of the professional development changes in the landscape of higher education, as well as global and geopolitical and so many other kinds of events going on. We also have to stay development of technology, because so much of the way in which we teach and in which we learn involves technology. I'm going to probably date myself a little bit again here if I didn't do that with the phone on the kitchen wall. I was an education major as an undergraduate, majored in home economics education. A required course was educational technology. These are the things I learned. How to load slides into a slide carousel. How to make dittos and mimeographs. How to splice a 16 millimeter film and put it on the film reel. How to use an overhead projector. Most of our students, they probably would not even know what any one of those was. So we continually have to stay ahead of technological developments and advances in our field. So that's another area for professional development. Another one is, in higher education today, one of the buzzwords is public-private partnerships. And so we have to learn who are those partners out there that we can learn from, that we can connect our students to get practica, to get internships, explore careers, or how can we tap into our partners who are so hungry for workers. There's a real labor shortage in a professional talent workforce. How do we talk to them to make sure we're preparing what the kinds of employees they need, the kinds of citizens that our communities need, and so knowing more about partnerships and who they are out there that we can partner with in connection with our disciplines. Other areas that we can learn are things like project management, event planning. Jennifer is a faculty member with a discipline who's up to date on technology, but I bet she's learning a whole lot more in this director of CEDL position about all kinds of things, from putting on events and making programs and lining speakers up and doing purchase requests and all of those kinds of things. So those are areas for professional development too. And there's many, many more, but just to expand your horizon about the kinds of things that you might pursue for professional development. So what are some of the resources available to do that? Certainly you're aware of CEDL, a Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. That's probably another area for professional development is acronyms. And what they do, but we have many, many resources across campus that you may or may not know about. Other things like the Research and Sponsored Projects Office, the Center for Excellence in Scholarship and Research, maybe accessibility resources that talks a lot about ADA and how do we keep our students. It might be the Violence Assault and Response Program. It might be the library. So expanding what is available on campus. At our last department chairs meeting, we had Carrie Miller, who I saw here, talk about open educational resources. So there's really, on our campus, extremely, extremely rich in professional development. I think also just making yourself available, letting people know that you want to learn. And can I have lunch with you? Can I talk about your role and what you do? I think I might kind of like to do what you do someday and sit down and get to talk to them and know them, because our people are really our richest resources. In addition to centers and places and offices, our campus is robust with events for professional development. When I think in just the last few weeks, last night we had the open house for our newly renovated additional location at 7700 France. Almost 200 people there, but I, of course, had a few words on the program, but we concluded the program by listening to two of our doctoral students, one who's graduating in May and one who's graduating. And oh my gosh, their research, talking to city leaders, talking to alumni, and the many, many resources there. On Wednesday, we had our first ever Health and Biomedical Sciences Summit, and we had some really, really exciting top-level people from Medtronic and from Mayo and from different divisions of Mayo. This coming week, for our Kessel Peace Institute, we're having one of the top scholars in the nation talk about, I think the posters are Democracy Under Siege, and he comes from the field of journalism. We just recently had the Carol Ortman Perkins lecture where we brought in Melissa Harris Perry. Those events are just, you could fill your calendar with those alone, but we really bring a slate of top caliber people to campus, nationally known, internationally known people, like our keynote speaker we're going to hear in just a moment. We also have our Rehab Ag colloquium. The list goes on and on. So take advantage of, there's no way one could possibly go to those, but sometimes go to something you don't think you would want to go to, something outside your field, outside your discipline, because a lot of research shows innovation most often comes from people outside the discipline. And so I'd just like to conclude with so how do we find balance in all of this? I'm probably not a living example of that if I'm here on my day off. But I know when I turned the clock back a number of years and I was interviewing for my very first tenure track positions. And a common question was, are you more interested in teaching or research? No one asked service, because we all know service is important. But if we're not doing good in the other, we're not going to get tenure promotion on service alone. And so there was this tug of war, like, they're either or. Are you for teaching or are you research? And you really can't, I really see them as three sides of a triangle. And I know in our landscape here, our context here, we have the 5 criteria. We divide 3 into 5. But they really are inextricably intertwined. And I'll just tell my own story. That's what I know best. As a faculty member, my field was health education, public health. And I was at an institution that didn't even have a major in my field. So I taught graduate level courses, I taught advanced upper division courses, 300-400 level that were required for a variety of majors. In the university I was at taught all students at Mankato University were required to take a personal health class. So every year, the entire freshman class was required to take that, and I was a coordinator of that. And so it was kind of like many freshman level survey courses. You get a wide variety of topics. And as I taught that, it was an incredibly enriching experience because I thought about it. Over the course of the year, I personally taught at least half the freshman class. And so by the time kids got to graduation, over half of them had me at least when they were a freshman, and then more when they were juniors or seniors or maybe grad students or in the honors program and so forth. So that was very rewarding. But the kinds of research that I did, and the university had a very heavy teaching load. I probably taught at least 500 students per semester, but we were also expected to write at least 2 grant proposals for a year. And sometimes you get those grants and then you have to do them, but even if you got a grant, that didn't take you off the hook from writing more proposals. But the kinds of grants and proposals I pursued were ones that enabled students to do and see things that they otherwise would not have done. So one of my lines of research was tobacco policy and prevention. So I would write grants at the American Cancer Society that would enable me to take a bus of students to the state capitol to testify on behalf of clean indoor air legislation. So without the grant, I would not have been able to afford the bus and to take students to do that. But so they were interconnected, and by doing that, we were doing service to the citizens of Virginia. So one really kind of begets the other. And in so doing that, if anyone is writing grants, people who fund grants aren't going to fund old ideas. So you have a big idea. We're great at that at this university. Translate your big idea into a proposal. Grant proposals are not always long and complex. I probably rarely wrote a grant proposal that was more than 10 pages. So you're going to have to do research to support your idea. That's professional development in the lit review and statement of the problem kind of thing. And then if you're successful and get the grant, I've never received a grant that you didn't have to go to some type of workshops or trainings or meetings with other people that were funded that had other current and big ideas. So I really that I learned and then I took back to my classes. Again, and you have to balance that. You tie the service into that, so it's all one. They're not either or, but in my mind, you can't do one without the other. And I think that's a culture that we can promote here. I still hear a lot of times people thinking, I can't do this because I teach so much, or I can't focus on advising or the many other kinds of responsibilities. And of course, we have to find balance amongst those, but it is possible and exciting and fun to do all of those kinds of things. And then, again, I continue to have to remind myself that we get the biggest ideas when we step away from the work. When I'm getting the Easter baskets together this afternoon and going to Target to buy a new Swiffer and maybe going outside to sweep the deck or sweep the yuck out of my garage that I'm looking forward to do this time of year, sometimes that's where the creative ideas come from. So it's when we step away to do physical activity or to relax or to rejuvenate. So we do have to, amongst the 5 criteria, we still have to remember to find that work-life family balance. So in conclusion, I'm just really, really excited you're here. I applaud Jennifer and the team for doing this. I know we're looking forward to how to be an agile faculty member, but I look forward to you sharing the excitement and enthusiasm when you go back to what you normally do on Monday and let the people you interact with know, like, boy, you really missed out because this was good. And you can be first in line for the second Scholars at Work conference. So thank you, Jennifer, for allowing me to be here today, and thank you and congratulations to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. So I'm intrigued by your idea that you were teaching in a program that didn't even have a major, because that's something in common with our keynote speaker, Rebecca Pope-Ruark. She's an associate professor at Elon University in the English department. If you've ever heard me introduce myself, I often say I'm in the English department, but I'm not that kind of English teacher, because most people think about literature or creative writing when they think about English, and I am in technical communication. Well, Rebecca comes from professional communication, technical communication, that general area as well, but she teaches courses in topics like publishing, editing, project management, and more recently she spearheaded an initiative to get a professional writing and rhetoric major at her institution. So it's brand new, and she is the coordinator of that program. She's also been leading an initiative on her campus about design thinking, and she wrote this book in her spare time about agile faculty, which is about managing your time, keeping an eye on your projects, and trying to find some sort of balance between the 3 legs of the pyramid that Provost Wells was talking about. So with that, I will turn it over to you and let you tell us about agile faculty. Can you hear me? Is it working? Is that good enough? Okay. Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here. I would just stand here and do this for a while. Thank you so much for being here this morning, and I want to thank Jennifer, who's a dear friend, for having me here. It's great to see people in their own contexts, right, to kind of come and see people's universities and how they work, and thank you, Provost Wells, for having me as well. I appreciate being here. So many little things that I could pull out of your introduction to kind of connect to what we're going to talk about today. We lead pretty weird lives, if you think about it, right? Faculty do things that not a lot of people understand outside of academia. My husband's a software developer, and he doesn't understand why if I have a bad day or someone's mean to me, I just can't go to my boss and say, I want to do something else. He doesn't understand. It's kind of difficult to go on the job market when he can just kind of drop out and drop back in somewhere else because he has a specific skill set. So we have really interesting kinds of lives, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book, because there's so many things going on around us, trying to balance the teaching and the research and the service, trying to think about how that fits into our lives, trying to think about what are our actual goals as faculty members that are proactive goals. You know, we tend to get in situations where we might just be reacting all the time, trying to keep up and reacting, and lose sight of those things. You know, we've all said, I'm going to write that article, it'll just take me a week, and then, you know, it will take you a week, but that is actual hours, and that week of time is spread out over 6 months, right? Not an actual week. So we have some interesting challenges as faculty members, but we also have great jobs, right? We have great students that are sometimes a mystery to us, but we try to figure out who they are and what they need and what we can help provide them to help them transition into the work of their communities and their workplaces. So we have so many great opportunities to really change the future and to innovate and to always be learning things, but it is a balancing, it's a juggling act. So how do we do that? So to get us started, I want you to think about these 3 words. Okay. So just take a minute, and you've got some handouts and just jot them down somewhere. So I'm going to give you like 90 seconds Okay. I'm going to have my phone for timers, so I'm not tweeting if I'm hanging out on my phone. So what to you, in thinking about your career and your professional development, what do these 3 words mean to you? Okay, so you can just take a few seconds and think about that. Do some word association or some ideas or things that are in your way for those. Give you another 10, 15 seconds. Just jot some thoughts down. What do these words mean to you in relation to your career and your professional development? So go ahead and wrap up that thought. These words are all going to mean something different to us in our different contexts, and they might mean different things when we think about our research or our service or other things that we do on campus and for our disciplines kind of writ large. And these are hard to judge. And when is the last time that you talked to someone about your professional vitality? Right? It's not really necessarily a way we think about it because there's a lot of stuff going on. So in your packet or in the middle of your table, there's a really terrible drawing of a sailboat. I was playing with icons and that's what I ended up with. It's really terrible. But here's what it kind of looks like in a much better drawn kind of articulation. So this activity is called Win in Your Sails, or you can call it Sail Your Boat, right? So this is an activity where I'd like you to use this metaphor. And at your table, just kind of think about, in terms of faculty success, faculty vitality, faculty productivity, what's kind of the helping team? What is the win in your sails? What gets you excited about that? What is your ultimate goal? When you hit land, what are you striving for? What are you sailing toward? Right? But we also have things that kind of weigh us down. So what might be kind of dragging those goals down? And also, what are some of the hidden risks? What are the rocks there? What are the things that you might not know are coming or maybe have come up that were unexpected for you? Right? So I'm going to give you 4 minutes or so to just kind of talk about this in your groups, and you can just jot some notes down on the different aspects. You are the sailboat. Get your sails up, right? And then think about what is the win in your sails? Who's helping you? But what could also be dragging you down? We don't often think about this in this way, so I want to just take a minute and have you guys articulate that at your teams, right? So just kind of elect a secretary to draw got to kind of articulate those goals recently?
We talked a little bit about the sustainability of our institution because a lot of colleges are facing tough times. And I think a lot of people are concerned about their careers in the future.
Yeah. So you have goals, and then you also have to think about what's maybe weighing or hiding under the surface there. Yeah. Other goals, and maybe things that might be in the way or hold you back from this?
I think you and I were having this conversation yesterday that sort of the fear of what's next, and if I get the next thing, where do I go from there?
Right. I found out, well, I should have known that I could go for full professor next year, and for some reason it like hit me in the face. Do I want to do that? Do I need to do that? Can I just do what I'm doing? Right. So, we have an interesting culture, and we're often, as faculty members, we don't maybe necessarily take the time to say, what are my goals? And they're going to change all the time because new positions come up or things happen, sustainability happens, and you have to rethink those goals. So how do we deal with that? So while we may have and hope for a narrative of productivity, vitality, and success, we also have constraints. Right? We're also very busy, and that can be stressful. That kind of narrative of busy. We have duties, right? There are duties as assigned, right? And those kind of come out of the woodwork a lot, right? So we're always kind of in that balancing act, trying to figure out how do we manage these things, right? And what does productivity look like? Does that look like 3 articles a year? Or does that look like some really excellent teaching evaluations? Or some really excellent teaching evaluations that you turn into an article, right? How do we kind of figure that out and work with the constraints that we have around us? So that's the reason I wrote the book, because I was certainly struggling with that, and I still struggle with it, right? How do we balance that? How do you take on the right amount of stuff, whatever that is? How do you figure out what you can say no to if you feel like you can say no, if you're even in that position? How do you manage the busy? My university is a very go liberal arts university. So we're always running, we're always striving. And we do great work and we have wonderful students, but that gets really old, really fast, right? So by spring break, you're ready for everything to be done at that point, right? So that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to change the narrative, change that narrative of constraint. The research on faculty vitality and higher ed research tells us that there are certain characteristics of vital faculty who have successful careers. And these are the people who find their way out of troughs, trying to rediscover their creativity, their curiosity, their empathy for students, right? They're real people, but sometimes they're kind of a blur, right? And you've seen it all before, and sometimes it's hard to empathize with them individually when you've seen the same problem 100 times, right? So thinking about actual goals, right? Writing your goals down, and then prioritizing them, right? Actually taking the time to do that once a year, once every couple of years, can be profound. Actually taking the time to do that. We're not often asked that. We might think about it in terms of promotion and tenure, or other kind of goals that we have, awards, but we often don't sit down and take the time to think about how we can do this for ourselves regularly. So Agile is just basically an umbrella term for a bunch of kind of project management methodologies that came out of software development. And if you think about old software development, it's very kind of manufacturing based, right? You guys design, you guys plan this, and then you guys code it, and then you throw it over the wall to the QA guys and hope it helps, but you've washed your hands with it, right? And you can imagine that kind of work doesn't work in knowledge work, right? You're always over budgeted. The coders aren't connected to the planning. It's going to bomb. And when the coders send it over the wall, it often doesn't work, and then they get mad at the QA guys for sending it back, right? It's a struggle. So Scrum is one of the methodologies that is most popular, and it's also one of the methodologies that is most transferable to just about any kind of work. You'll find Scrum popping up in all kinds of places. Publishing, PR firms, creative firms. There's even a TED Talk on agile parenting, right? So what's great about Scrum is it's just a nice empirical framework that doesn't tell you what to do, or well, it tells you what, it helps you figure out what to do without telling you how to do it. You figure all that stuff within the framework. So Scrum is based in empirical process control theory. So it's really grounded in these 3 pillars, right? Being transparent with your work, letting other people know what you're doing, and having that kind of out there and being open about it. Having opportunities to inspect that work. So it might be a review, or you might share an article draft with somebody so that they can see it and help you see it differently. And then adapting based on that feedback. I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do with the feedback that I got? How can I cycle through and improve something that I want to improve on? But what I like about about Scrum are these 5 values. Okay. Most of your Agile methodologies have some level of those 3 pillars from empirical process control. But Scrum itself is really grounded in 5 values. And I think these 5 values really align nicely with faculty life and the things that we value about kind of our independence. We're almost kind of like independent contractors sometimes with these duties that pull us together to our university community. So the goal for Scrum and this framework and this kind of collaborative thinking is to find time to focus on something that you are committed to, that you're brave about, that you have some courage to follow through, that you're committed to, that you're open to hearing from other people and other people's ideas, and you respect the ideas that are coming at you. Scrum is a team-based methodology. We don't all work in teams, and that's fine. I'm going to talk you through the process and imagine you're a software developer just for now. Imagine you work in an environment. You can even think about it if you work in a lab or you work with a group. We can see what the process looks like that way, and then I'll help you understand how it applies to faculty work. So this is the framework. This is a super scary picture. I'm going to break it down for you, but once we talk through the pieces of it, this is going to make a lot more sense. Okay? So Scrum is an iterative process, so it's based in short cycles. So you start here, okay? Again, imagine you're a software developer and you're working on a product, right? So you have this big product. You're probably not the only team working on that product, right? If you think about Adobe Photoshop, there's certainly more than one team working on all the functionality to upgrade Photoshop, right? So these little cube guys are the backlog. These are the things that need to get built, or the things that need to be done. Okay, so these are kind of mini projects within the product. And there are multiple product teams working on those different pieces, right? So one product team might pull over the first 3, another product team might turn over one of the big ones, and kind of move it into their particular workflow. So everybody's working on the product, but they're working on different pieces of it in groups. When you get down into the group, a Scrum team tends to have 3 areas, kind of 3 roles, right? The first one is the team. So that's everybody who would be doing the work, people who actually do the work, right? Scrum works in cross-functional teams. So no longer are the coders doing their thing over here and not talking to the quality assurance people and not talking to the interface design people. There is a couple of coders and a UA person and a UI person all on the team. Sometimes there's a technical writer on the team, so that when they commit to doing something, they finish the whole chunk. They don't need someone else to finish it for them, right? So that's the team. Then there are 2 kind of managerial roles, but they're almost more like facilitators. So the Scrum Master is essentially the process facilitator. Right? It's a fancy way, kind of a funny title, right? But one of the guys who developed Scrum as a methodology was kind of cantankerous and he hated managers, so he wanted to give them a different title that sounded way better than manager. So they are now Scrum Masters, and I am a certified Scrum Master. So basically that person is in charge of helping the team get their work done. Right? And that doesn't mean telling them what to do in a traditional kind of project management framework. It means making sure they know what they're doing, that no one's kind of in their way, that there's no blockers or there's, somebody coming in and trying to steal them away from their work, really facilitating and making sure that they use the process to the best of their ability. And then the product owner is what is closest to a traditional project manager. This is the person who's the liaison with the business. So the business and the clients want this stuff. I'm going to help kind of write up what we need to put in that backlog. And then I'm going to help make sure that the teams are doing the things that are prioritized right now. And those priorities shift. Sometimes priorities fall off because something happened and you need to do something else. That's okay. So when a team comes from the big backlog, they get assigned some pieces, and then they build their own backlog. So this is a smaller backlog called a sprint backlog. Sprints in Scrum are really the foundation for the process. Okay? In software development, they're usually 2 to 4 weeks. Okay? At the beginning of that, the team kind of works with the product owner to come up with their sprint backlog. And these are the things that they are committed to accomplishing in whatever their sprint time frame is. Okay? So it might be 2 weeks, it might be 4 weeks. At the end of that month, we will have finished something that works and can be plugged in. Right? So it's soup to nuts, done. This is part of the transparency piece of this. So once they figure out what they're going to do, what they can commit to, what they know they feel good about being able to accomplish at the end of that, let's say, 4-week period, they build a Scrum board. Okay, this is part of that transparency piece. So this is probably the simplest project management board you've ever seen. And when you start using one, you can't believe you never thought of it. kind of one of those transformative kind of experiences. So this is a sprint team, this is a sprint team board with their sprint backlog. So they've got kind of two big chunks that they're working on in the backlog, and then they've got little tasks associated with them. These are the smaller, actionable, granular things that we can do in a relatively quick period of time that will help us meet our goals. Okay, so smaller chunks. Once they've got the backlog set up, they kind of talk about who's doing what, and then they move what they're going to do first into the work in progress column, right? What can you tell visually about that work in progress column? Yes, there's definitely fewer items. Anybody else see the difference? Smaller chunks, but the column itself is also narrower, right? Reminding us visually that we can't do everything at once. All the stuff that we need to do, it's sitting over here. It's there for you when you're ready for it, but you can't do it all at once. So what are the things that you can do now that you can commit to focusing on right now and get those done, move it into done, and then you can go back to the backlog and pull something else out, right? So we're kind of in that empirical process control mode right now, thinking about what you can really actually do in a short period of time. Right? So back to the framework. Right? So this is a cycle. When we think about that sprint as a 2 to 4 week cycle, we start with planning. You've got your product owner person who's got kind of these are the business priorities, and these are how we can break them down into things that need to get accomplished. So that person meets with the team. The team decides what they can accomplish. What can we actually do in this 2 to 4 week period? What else do we need to know to be able to do this? Do we have questions? How would we break it down? Right? Does it make sense? Do we need more information? Right? But they're the people who are going to do the work. And if they don't think they can do 4 things that the PO wants them to do, they say that, because they're the people doing the work. But once they've gone through this planning and they've broken it down, put it on their scrum board, they're committed to that for their sprint. And at the end of that sprint, they're going to get this stuff done. It's on their backlog. Right? So then we move into the cycle. We move into the work cycle. Right? We've got 2 to 4 weeks to get these things done. Right? So this is our, let's just imagine this is a 2-week thing. But you can see that there's a cycle. Right? So the team is working. Every day they're working. And they're certainly not all in a room doing exactly the same thing. Right? They get different tasks and they might kind of pair up to get something done. Or they might work a little differently. Kind of, I'm going to go in my hole and do this thing that we need to do first before we can do this other stuff. But they don't all hide in their holes forever. Okay. My husband's a software developer, so of course he would rather stay in a hole and not talk to anybody ever again. They have the most passive-aggressive conversations over instant message with the people who are like 2 doors down from them. Right? Kind of that mentality. But the daily scrum, I think, is one of the probably the most important pieces of this process, especially when you're working on a team or you're trying to understand your own commitment. So the daily scrum is a 15-minute meeting. It's a stand-up meeting. So the team meets usually in the morning at a specified time in a specified location. They stand in a circle and they answer 3 questions. Everyone answers 3 questions. No other discussion. It's an answer and a listen time. Okay. The first question is, what have I done since we last met to meet our goals? What have I done since we last met to contribute to our goals for this sprint? Second question is, what am I going to do today to help us meet our goals as a team? So, what have I done? What am I going to do? Where do I need help? The third question is, where might I be stuck? Where might I need help? That question can be transformative. If you think about software developers who would like to hide in their hole, they don't ask for help. But every single morning, you're in your stand-up, and you have the opportunity to say, I'm stuck on this, I need help. Or to listen to someone else who needs help and offer it. So that's where the trust and the respect really build up in a team, because every morning, they tell each other what they've done and what they're doing to help the team meet their shared goals and their shared commitment. But they also naturalize asking for help. I do this with students on projects, and it changes the way they think about their teamwork, and it changes the way they empathize with each other, because they always have an opportunity to ask for help if they need it. We kind of pulled the curtain back on that. It's not about your grade right now, it's about what can you do to make your team be successful. Okay? So every day they do that, until they get to the end of the sprint, and then there are 2 meetings. Okay, the first meeting is a review meeting. It's basically a demo. Right? It's an open meeting. Folks from other teams can show up, stakeholders can show up, the PO's usually there to see what they've accomplished, and they actually show what they've done. Right? We promised that we were going to deliver this thing that works in 4 weeks. Here it is, we're going to show it to you. Right? Sometimes it's just code, sometimes it's already plugged in. Depends on what the sprint goals are. Right? So they show that to people, and then they take feedback. And then they listen to the feedback. So it's always great to have other teams there, because it might conflict with something that they're doing, or they might have ideas and they've already faced a problem. So it's really this open kind of feedback session. And the team will take that feedback back into their next planning cycle. The review is the other meeting that I think is most informative. The retrospective. Okay? So while the review is an open meeting of anybody that wants to see what they've done, the retrospective is just for the team. And if the review is a product meeting, the retro is a process meeting. This is where the group might do something like the sailboat activity. Based on our sprint last week, how did we do with the team? Did we support each other well? Were there some breakdowns in communication that we really need to talk about and talk through? What went well? What do we need some help on? Or are we missing a person that can contribute to this to make sure that we meet our goals more? But it's a time for them to think about and reflect on their own collaboration and teamwork. And then again, commit to a couple of things they're going to focus on in the next sprint to be better teammates, to be a stronger team. So it's not just about what they've done, it's about how they did it and how they can improve as human beings supporting each other in their work and professional development. Okay? And then once the retro is over, you would go next sprint 2. We're going back to planning, we're going to go through the cycle again, and we're just going to keep going. Okay? This is designed for work that doesn't end. Right? Most people who use this are not, we don't get CD or Photoshop 2 anymore and not see another CD for 2 years. They're always pushing updates and they're always changing things, right? So this is a continuous cycle, constant maintenance and constant development based on what the priorities of the business are and how things are growing specifically. Clearly, most of you are not software developers, right? And most of you probably don't think of yourself as working on a team or having a product, right? So how does that translate into what your faculty work is? It's actually a pretty easy translation. Okay? Instead of products, you've got lots of projects, right? You might be working on different research projects, you might be working on course development or a task force service committee that is kind of ongoing for you. You've got lots of things that you're doing. If you think about them as projects instead of products, that's kind of more of our language. Okay? We've always got multiple things going, but we also have priorities, right? Sometimes those are time priorities. Sometimes this is what I really want to be working on right now, priorities. Sometimes this is what my dean tells me I have to be working on, priorities, right? And those change, those flex over time, you learn new stuff. Stuff falls off, you realize that project's not going to work, you take it off, right? So you have your own backlog of stuff that you're working on, right? And all of that stuff can be broken into smaller pieces, right? You might have an article on your Scrum board. There's a heck of a lot of stuff that has to get done to go into that. Even if you think, I'm going to write the literature review for my article, there's a ton of little tasks that have to get done, right? If you write lit review on your to-do list, it's going to stay there for weeks, taunting you, right? But if you have write lit review, and then you have a whole bunch of sticky notes and say, these are the different granular pieces I need to do to finish that lit review, you can see your progress as opposed to just having it hanging out there on your to-do list, mocking you, right? You can sprint or you can not sprint, right? I tend to sprint not during a regular semester, right? We have a 4-1-4 calendar at my university, so we have a 3-week January term. Sometimes I teach that, sometimes I don't. So if I'm not teaching it on my sprint during January, I usually do a few sprints in the summer just to kind of keep accountable to myself. It's virtually impossible to sprint during a regular semester. I teach all undergraduates, and they need a lot of attention, right? Especially at a private school. So sometimes I sprint, sometimes I don't. But you can still keep going through the process, right? So at the end of the sprint, at the end of a week, at the end of a month, you can hold your own review, right? What have I actually accomplished? Does it work? You might have maybe a writing group that you kind of have a review meeting with your writing partners and see where everyone is and if they've met their commitments, what they might be able to do better or what has changed. Okay? And then a retrospective. I have retrospectives with myself all the time. It's a chance for me to be honest with myself about what's happening. Right? What am I doing? What am I overestimating? What am I struggling with? How can I be better in the next month or the next summer? I also can do that with my writing group. Right? You can talk about your process as well as your product in your writing group or in your research group. Okay? And that's all. I can just keep going. Right? Sometimes I'll daily sprint with myself, which sounds kind of funny. I won't stand up in a corner by myself. But, I'll take 10 minutes at the beginning of the day or at the end of the week or something and update my scoreboard. This is what's realistic, this is what's not realistic. I may have learned something that some of the tasks aren't necessary anymore or don't make sense for where the project is going. You just pop those off and swap them back on. Right? Scrum is really just a kind of a shell company for Post-its. It's a big conspiracy by the Post-it industry to keep themselves in business for the rest of their lives. So we go through a lot of sticky notes when we do this. Okay? So you can develop your own board. Right? Some folks have kind of a comprehensive board. My husband convinced me that I needed a comprehensive board right now, and it takes up the entire wall of my office. It's terrifying. I hate it. I'm going to take most of it down. It's scary, right? But all those projects are somewhere, right? I've got a running kind of document of the things that I want to be working on or can be working on that I changed. But for this semester or for this January, these are the 2 articles that I'm committed to. The 2 of the things that I really want to be doing, right? And then same kind of thing. There is something psychologically powerful about taking a sticky note, moving it into work in progress, finishing it, and putting it in a done column. And the more you do that, and the fuller that side gets, the more little cheers you get. There's a boost to that. You are making progress, and you can see it because you've made it transparent and visual. Right? You can certainly do this electronically. Right? There are lots of Mankato, Trello. There's a lot of places where you can do it electronically. But I find that, especially the students, the psychological benefit of moving a little sticky note down the board and putting it in done gives them a boost in the pump. Something that they value. Yeah, is it still running? Okay, so I'm going to talk you through a few examples of how I've used this personally in terms of research activities, service activities, and teaching activities. Okay, so this is my scrum board. This is my scrum board from 2 months ago. This is my January scrum board. Okay. I committed to 2 articles and then threw another one up there in case I was really, really awesome in those couple of weeks. It was kind of the stretch goal. Because it was already half done. The orange one was already half done. So I could, theoretically, if I made good progress on the other 2, I could possibly have done it. Okay. That didn't end up happening, and I didn't beat myself up for that. Because it turned out that both of those articles, I kind of rejiggered a lot, and they needed more work than I thought they were going to need. But I didn't figure that out until week 2. So I couldn't have known that when I set the board up, right? The interesting thing oftentimes about this board and when you put these projects together is that you decide what you're going to do when you have the least information about something. Right? And as you do it and as you go through it and as you work through it, things change, you learn more stuff, you realize different directions. The nice thing about sticky notes is they're kind of ephemeral and they're recyclable. You can actually get a thing called slicky notes that are these kind of like plasticky kind of things that static cling to boards. You can just like move them around your finger. They're supposed to be rewritable, but we've had we haven't had good success with the rewritables. But they're kind of fun to just kind of move around the board. Okay, so these articles needed something different. So I tracked the progress on this because I was tweeting it for accountability, and big changes all the time, just because I kept kind of thinking through or learning something new and doing it differently than I had originally intended to do it. Okay. So I did get those 2 articles out. I got them out kind of closer to the end of February, right? But they did go out, and I made the most progress on them, and they are back out now. Okay. So this helped kind of keep me accountable, and really tweeting them helps too. Okay, if you're kind of into that thing, because people can kind of see your progress and kind of see how you're working, and sometimes that helps other people as well. So the next example is a service example. So this is a student organization that I mentored. They have lots of different committees. This happens to be a sorority. They have lots of different committees, but they don't have, not every member wants to like be actively involved and do a lot of stuff, right? So they were having the kind of committees where the chair just does everything, or they do nothing at all. And it's hard to even get committee members to like bring cookies to an event that they're in charge of sometimes, right? So I taught them how to use scrub boards. So this is a really scaled down version. The one I showed you in the research example is a whiteboard in my office, right? That was my home office. My office at work, I kind of have a wall where I do this. We don't have that luxury for a student group, right? You often don't have that luxury for teaching, right? A wall that you can commandeer for the entire semester or the length of the project. That's really hard. So you can just use a plain old manila folder, right? Draw some lines in it, make a little scrub board, and just use smaller sticky notes. Okay, just use 2x2 sticky notes instead of the regular 3x3s or 4x4s, right? So this particular committee was really trying to get a lot of events related to scholarship done. Right? It's not a perfect scrum board because they're more like the things that they're doing instead of more like tasks, but you can see they felt like they were getting a lot done. They really felt like they were actually kind of doing something that they could see and see their progress on, more than just kind of talking for 20 minutes at a meeting and then letting the chair do everything. Right? So oftentimes when I teach this to students in class, they'll come back and show me pictures of the board that they made in their room for their final exams, or to kind of keep track of maybe their honors project or things like that. So learning this process really kind of trickles into other work once you kind of get used to it. The third example is a teaching example. Okay? And rather than showing you another scrum board, they're just the easiest thing to visualize, right? They're super easy that way. This is a way to kind of think about the language of the different pieces of the framework in teaching terms, right? So the curriculum might be your project. I didn't teach you the epic and story language, but basically an epic is a really big project and a story is a piece of that project. So if an article is your epic, the lit review is a story, right? It's a chunk of it. Kind of think about it that way. This is language that they use in software development. I tend to teach it to students because they like the language, right? We are on an epic quest to tell the story and finish the story, right? It gives them new language to kind of think about projects, and they kind of like it that way. So you can break them down. A sprint is just a unit, really, kind of a unit in your class that you're doing. It's got a beginning and an end. That's an easy way to think about it. And then review might be the deliverable, the presentation, the thing at the end that they showcase or they get evaluated on. But you can also do the retrospectives, and we do this a lot probably just when you think about asking your students to reflect at the end of a process, or at the end of a project. So they might do it individually in a reflection to you, or if it's a group project, they can do it with their team. What did we do well? What do we need to do better next time? Or even if they're not going to be together in a team much longer, what are we each going to do better in terms of process when we're in a group next time, right? So they can think about those kind of things. So you can use the language in the different pieces of the framework to kind of think about how you organize your classes, right? So this is just kind of 3/4 of a semester for publishing class. So I have 5 stories, like 5 kind of big learning goals. You can kind of think of them as your student learning outcomes. These are the different things that you want to kind of connect to and make sure you get done. And then I've broken them up into sprints with different pieces of the project, or different kind of learning goals or learning activities that we're going to do. Right? So this happens to be a predominantly project-based class, but it doesn't have to be, right? There can be a deliverable at the end of those, a presentation or a paper or whatever it is at the end of it. It could be whatever you want it to be. But I'm tracking which of these things that I'm hitting, right? If these are my student learning outcomes, where am I actually doing them? And what am I doing that's going to accomplish them? What are the activities? What are the tasks that they're going to accomplish to get that particular thing done? So we're going to do a little bit of an activity now. If you want to grab your handouts, everybody should have a set of handouts. Okay. So I've walked you through the process. This particular format, just kind of introduce what a story is. Right. This is a format that software developers use to kind of connect themselves to their users. As a certain type of user of this product that I'm building, I want to be able to do something so that I can meet a goal. It helps software developers get out of their own heads, what they think people want, right? Just think about how many functions Microsoft Word has that you never use, or you've never even heard of. Most of those were some software developer falling down a rabbit hole and then dumping it in the product anyway, right? So this kind of language and starting from this place helps them really keep their users front of mind. Okay, it takes them out of their head and puts them into the user's head. Okay, this is also, we found in some of our research, to be an excellent goal-setting tool. Okay, we've done it with students in our design thinking program, and the outcomes are so interesting. Right? Because they have to think about, what role am I playing right now? You know, as a student, or as a future professional, or as a public health major. Right? They think about their different roles, and then they think about their goals. But they also think about why they have goals. Right? Why do you want to graduate with honors? Right? Why do you want to do this thing? Why do you want to lead this organization? Okay, so really thinking about it as a personal and professional development opportunity. So, what I'd like you to do, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. Right? And just think about your own personal goals. Kind of going back to the beginning when you were thinking about what productivity, vitality, and success means to you. What does that look like? So see if you can write yourself a few stories. You can think about yourselves as different types of teachers, or service-oriented folks, or researchers. Right? But try to get specific as a what type of faculty member. What do I want to accomplish? And why? Why is that important? Okay, so we're thinking about goals and starting to think about priorities for those as well. Okay? So just take a couple of minutes and think about yourself and try to articulate some of your goals. To think about what you care about, regardless maybe of what you think is duty or kind of a source of busy. If you were starting and you could have anything you wanted, what would that look like? What would you really care about right now? So in the interest of time, I'm just going to have you kind of wrap up where you are there. I come back to this format a lot. Right? I'm a planner. I like to plan. I like to come up with new stuff. I have more of a problem with follow through on stuff. Like I like to stand it up and get it going and then spin it off to someone else if I can. So this reminds me that there's a reason that I wanted to do this thing. And if there's not a good reason, why are you doing it? Okay. So I think as faculty members, most of us were the type A kid, right? We were the A student who really wanted to get stuff done. And we tend to overload ourselves. And some of it we can't escape. There are certain service things that we can't escape or teaching requirements that we can't escape. But we can think about where we're putting our time and where we're putting the pressure on ourselves. And how realistic is that? For most of us, getting 3 articles done in a semester is not going to happen. Okay? If you have a teaching load. It's just not going to happen. So why freak yourself out about trying to do it? Right? Maybe you could get 1 article done in 6 weeks. And then you can see something's done. Something that you valued. The nice thing about stories is they let you kind of articulate the why piece, which we often don't think about. We often take, here's a list of the things I'm doing. Here's the list of the projects I'm doing or the things that I want to write. Adding the why component to it, and also even the identity, kind of the role piece of it, helps us really see where the balances are, maybe the imbalances are, and gives us a point to start thinking about what we can focus our attention on and what we can start prioritizing. Okay, so the next paper that you have is a backlog. Okay, it's the one that has the project, kind of a mini scrum board, but it has project, so the building your backlog sheet. So thinking about the goals that you just wrote or the goals that you kind of have for yourself, right? In that left column, what are some projects that you're working on? Or things that you're doing now that kind of fall into that priority category? Okay? So just give them a little name, whatever that might be, an article kind of title, might be a service project or something like that. What are the projects that are on your plate right now that you care about? Hopefully ones that align with the stories that you wrote. Things that help you meet those goals that you made or that you have for yourself. So the first column in the projects is really thinking about that epic level, that big level. I'll explain the rest of the diagram so you can kind of do it at your leisure for the next few minutes. So the projects are the big things. Pick just 1 or 2 of them for now, just because that's the column space that we have. And then list what are, maybe just pick 1. What are the big chunks of that? Right? So an article is just the easiest way to explain it. Write the introduction, write the lit review. You know? But there's stuff before that. If you're starting a research project, you might have to write the IRB first. Right? So if you pick 1 of those projects, what are the bigger chunks that have to get done? And then the last column is for the tasks. Those are the granular things. So if write lit review is one of your stories, is one of your chunks, what are kind of the small bullet points of things that you can do? Right? It might be a database search. It might be make it a grad student print everything out for you. Or I don't have graduate students, so I'm very jealous if you have graduate students. It might be read 5 articles. You know, what are some little chunks that you feel like are doable in a relatively short period of time? A couple hours. But things that'll help you really make progress toward meeting that goal and finishing those stories. So give yourself a couple minutes to maybe think about 1 of those projects and how that might break down for you. So if I was doing this personally, if I was in my office or something like that, I would be writing these things on sticky notes. Okay. Writing individual tasks on sticky notes, maybe a bigger sticky note that has the project name on it or the story name. And I would be writing those individual pieces on a sticky note each. Okay. Sticky notes are cheap. Sticky notes move easily. Sticky notes are ephemeral. Throw them away when it goes away. Right? So I would be building my backlog that way so I could look at things. Right? The next thing I would do is think about my commitment. Maybe I'm sprinting, or maybe I'm kind of just going to commit to one project, and then I would visualize it. Then I would build my Scrum board, which is your next handout. We don't need to do that right now because you can kind of just think through what that would look like. So if building your backlog is here's all of this stuff, right? Which I only recommend doing like once a semester or so, because it can get freaked out a little bit sometimes if you're overwhelmed. But the next thing you would do is, what are the projects that you're going to work on for whatever time frame you're giving yourself? Okay? So you may take that one project that you just built all the sticky notes for, move them onto your Scrum board with all the tasks, okay? And then decide what you're going to work on. What is the first thing I can do to move these forward? Right? Move that into work in progress, and then just keep rolling. You know, as you maybe have some found time, or you've blocked out some time to do certain things, whatever's in the work in progress is your next task. You don't really have to think about it. You don't have to kind of stare at a list and wonder what you're going to do. You've written something out. Right? And I think for faculty, my husband always yells at me that I have too many things going on in the projects, but that's the way we work, right? Things are kind of coming at different angles, and they require different levels of complexity or different levels of time. So just kind of seeing them there. It's also nice when you do find some time, you know, a meeting gets canceled or a student doesn't show up, right? I have 10 minutes, I have 15 minutes. Is there an easy thing I can pull off the board and do? You know, you might be able to send those 10 articles to the copier, and then you've got that done and you've got them ready to go. Or you might be able to read an article. So it keeps everything front of mind. These are the things I'm working on. These are the things I've committed to. I can take little pieces of it and get little pieces of it done and move that project forward. Okay? So are you with me? Scrum boards are, even if you take nothing else away, build yourself a Scrum board and you will be like magically impressed with how productive that you feel, because you just see little things happening, right? I'm chipping away at it, and that's okay. It's that kind of small win psychological theory, right? I can see little things happening, and I feel good about that. And if these are projects I care about, I prioritize them, right? For whatever reason, and I want to move forward. Okay? So I have one last activity, and then we probably have a couple minutes for some little questions, and I'll hang out. I'll be here all day. You can chat with me, right? So the last one. This is another retrospective activity. So this is an activity that I do with my students. We do it in the design thinking studio with our students because we're kind of creating that educational experience together. So we'll do this a couple of times where they really actually review the program and the course that they're in. But we do this as kind of faculty teams and things like that to think about how are things going? How's this committee doing? Or how are we doing as a department, right? So in this activity, if we were doing it on a wall, we would draw kind of a starfish on a wall, and then everybody would take a couple minutes with a pack of sticky notes and then jot down all the things that are working, not working, that they wish we were doing, right? And then at the end of that kind of brainstorming activity, everyone would go put their sticky notes on the wall next to the appropriate category. And then they're all up there together. And then we often will have one person stand up, and you're in charge of the do less category. So can you summarize the sticky notes that are in that category for us? And then we can have a conversation about that without one person kind of pointing someone else out or calling someone else out. Okay? So what I would like you to do with yours is to think about going back to that definition of productivity and vitality, okay, and success. Thinking about maybe what the rest of your semester is going to look like, or the next couple of weeks. Thinking about your process. Thinking about the priorities that you have and the things that you care about. What are some things you're going to keep doing? What are you going to try to stop doing? Right? What do you might want to start doing? Maybe you want to make a Scrum board. Okay? What do you want to do less of? What do you want to do more of? Okay? So just take a couple minutes and think about that in kind of your own personal and professional development. What are some pieces of that process that you want to hang on to or shift a little bit? Okay? So give you a couple minutes to just think about that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave you with that. You have the handouts, you can keep working on them. I don't want any of the folks who are presenting at 9:45 to freak out about time. So thank you, I hope you learned some stuff. We don't have time for questions right now, but I'll be here for lunch and we can take questions and have conversations at lunch as well. Okay? If you're sticking around, I'm doing a workshop at 9:45 to think about how you can do this work with students in collaborative projects, think about group projects differently. Okay? So I hope you got some pieces of it out. You can learn more on my website, RebeccaPopeRuark.com. There's a lot of blog posts about different ways to think about this kind of stuff, both for your research work or your teaching work as well. So thank you for having me. I hope you found it useful and can think about how to move forward with your personal definitions of productivity and success. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was great. The first year faculty cohort has, at least a group of them, have been reading this with me this semester as a common read. If you're interested in what a Scrum board can look like in addition to Rebecca's, come by my office. I'm using the back of my door, trying it out. I haven't really been doing the retrospectives, the reviews, so I'm going to have to build that in. But I hope that
if you're interested in how the review retrospective might work kind of as a person, I did a 2017 review and retrospective on my blog, so I wrote about what I kind of talked through when I did those, so you can check those out and see how you might think about that.
Great. So just a couple of issues of housekeeping. So this is our central room. There's still food in the back if you want to grab something to take with you to the 9:45 session. We're going to be in 201, 202, 204, which are in the hallway back over there. And there's a session at 9:45, then another one, and that one's an hour, and then the second one's at 11. We'll be back in here for lunch at noon, and we'll also have posters up and presenters standing available to talk about them for about 30 minutes. So I hope you get a chance to drop by and talk to people about posters. If you're looking for restrooms, there's restrooms in between here and the meeting rooms. There's also some restrooms around the corner. So thank you very much, and I'll let you decide where you're heading to next.